This week was Apple's big fall event where they announced new iPhones, including the first ever iPhone Air, as well as new Apple Watches and a new version of arguably one of the best Apple products ever, the AirPods Pro. And the event was interesting. There were some expected updates, some complete surprises, both good and bad, and even a few decisions that I'm still trying to fully understand and wrap my head around. So let me tell you which updates I think actually matter and that you should care about, and who should consider upgrading this year. The new AirPods Pro 3 were announced, and apparently they will have better noise cancellation than Gen 2, which I don't understand how that could be possible, because I love Gen 2, I've been using them since they came out. They already sound so good, but apparently these AirPods Pro 3 will have 2 times better noise cancellation than the previous model. There will also be a new heart rate sensor in the AirPods, which I think could be a game changer for anyone who hates wearing an Apple Watch, but still wants to use the Apple Fitness app to track workouts and be able to see all of your health data. But the most buzzworthy new feature has to be live translations. So if you're wearing AirPods and someone speaks to you in a different language, your AirPods will translate what they're saying so that you understand. And then you can use your phone to respond back. But if the other person is also wearing AirPods, you can basically have an entire conversation through the AirPods. So anything you would say would then be translated for the other person in their AirPods, and anything they respond back would be translated in your AirPods so that you understand. I think this could be a really cool feature as long as it works properly and there's not too much of a delay so that the conversation can actually flow somewhat naturally. And what I'm really happy about though is that this new feature is not exclusive to these new AirPod Pro 3. So the previous gen AirPods Pro 2 will have live translation, as well as the non-Pro model AirPods 4. So that's cool. However, you do need to have an Apple Intelligence compatible phone. So you have to have either a 15 Pro or Pro Max, any of the 16s, or any of these new 17 devices. And the other important thing to note that could be a game changer for some people is that the tips on these AirPod Pro 3s will be different. So there will be some foam on the inside to help with fit, and there will be 5 different sizes. So if you've had issues with how AirPods have fit in the past, this could be a big deal for you. So all that being said though, should you actually upgrade to these new AirPods Pro 3? I think it's only worth it in 2 cases. One, if you are someone that does hate wearing an Apple Watch, but you do want to be able to track your workouts, then the new heart rate sensor in these AirPods will make a difference for you. 2, if you are someone that has never been able to get the right fit with AirPods in the past, and I know there's a ton of people out there that have complained about this, these new ones could solve that for you. I personally will not even be upgrading. I'm going to stick with my AirPods Pro 2, and because I will still have access to the live translation feature, I'm happy with that. They also announced 3 new Apple Watches. So Apple Watch Series 11, Ultra 3, and SE 3. And besides the typical battery life improvements and a stronger, more scratch-resistant glass, there are really only 2 new features to the watches that I think are worth mentioning. The first is a new sleep score. So previously your watch would track your sleep duration, your sleep stages, some of your vitals like your heart rate, respiratory rate, wrist temperature, but it wouldn't really tell you if that meant you slept well or not. So this new sleep score will rate your quality of sleep by looking at 3 different metrics. 1 is the duration of your sleep, 2 is your bedtime, and essentially how consistently you go to bed at the same time, and 3 is if there were any interruptions to your sleep. And so hopefully looking at this new sleep score and the different metrics, you'll be able to figure out what might be impacting your sleep if you're not sleeping very well. The next new feature is hypertension alerts, which essentially is if you are demonstrating signs of high blood pressure throughout the month, then your watch will alert you to that. However, it's important to note that it will not be able to take readings or on-the-spot readings of your blood pressure. It's really only looking at trends and patterns every 30 days to let you know if you may possibly have hypertension. And thankfully, both of these new features will be available on older Apple Watches, so Series 9, Series 10, and Ultra 2. So if you already have one of these older models of Apple Watches, I personally don't think it's worth upgrading because you're already going to get the new features anyways. But if you do have an even older Apple Watch and you're having battery issues, or you do really want any of these new features, then you should consider upgrading. Personally, I have my Series 9 still, and I'm sticking with it. Then we get to the new iPhones, and I actually think the winner of the entire event has to be the new iPhone 17, just the base model. It won't really look any different other than some new colors, and the screen actually is a little bit bigger. It's gone from 6.1 inches from the iPhone 16 to 6.3 inches on this iPhone 17, but it by far got the most meaningful updates, a better battery and a better, more performant chip. That happens pretty much every year. But the screen alone on this new iPhone 17 got 5 updates. The new glass they're calling Ceramic Shield 2, which is 3 times more scratch resistant than the previous version. It'll also be anti-glare glass, which won't make it completely matte, but it is supposed to reduce 30% of glare. It'll be a brighter display, and it'll get 2 previously Pro-only features, one being the always-on display, and the second being finally the ProMotion 120 Hz refresh rate, which is an industry standard, so it was kind of more shocking that Apple had never done it, but they had previously been trying to keep a difference between the Pro phones and the base model phone. No longer, the base model is finally going to have ProMotion. Now, both cameras on the back, the main camera and the ultra-wide camera, will both be 48 megapixels. And then the front selfie camera, which almost never gets updated, has been completely redesigned. So it's now an 18 megapixel camera. The sensor, which used to be rectangular like the phone, is now a square sensor. And that in itself is such a big deal that I have a feeling every other phone manufacturer is going to start copying this. Because what it means is you can now take a selfie either in portrait mode or landscape mode without actually having to rotate the phone. Because the sensor is square, there's now more room on either side. So when you want to take a photo like this, if you need a wider shot, the sensor can handle that, even if your phone is still in portrait mode, which makes it so much easier, especially for group shots, because you're holding your phone where it's a lot more comfortable to take a photo, and everyone knows where to look. Everyone knows the lens is at the top. Before, when you'd have to rotate your phone, people wouldn't know which side of the phone to look at, and it's just a lot harder for you to kind of balance and take the shot. So it'll make such a difference for those front camera shots and videos, and what's cool is that you can manually rotate it if you need the wider shot, but it's also smart enough to recognize that if multiple people enter the screen or enter the frame with you, it'll automatically expand to include them in your shot. So this is an incredible update to the front camera, and it's probably what I'm most excited to try. But the other part of this is you can now dual capture. So when you're recording with the back camera, you can also record with the front camera at the same time. And I think this is going to be great for reaction type videos. If let's say you're at an event and you want to record what you're seeing, but you also want to be able to record your reaction to it at the same time. And as if all of that wasn't enough, in a very un-Apple move, they also doubled the storage of the iPhone 17 for the same price as the iPhone 16. So now the iPhone 17 base model comes with 256 gigabytes of storage instead of 128, but it's the same price you would have paid last year for 128 gigabytes on the iPhone 16. So I would even strongly recommend that anyone on a base model iPhone should consider upgrading to the iPhone 17 this year. Even if you're on an iPhone 16, there's an argument for it, because there are 7 improvements that have nothing to do with battery or performance on the iPhone 17 compared to the iPhone 16. 7. There's the ProMotion display, the always-on display, a brighter display, the anti-reflective coating, the selfie camera, the 48 megapixel ultra-wide camera, and all of that with double the storage. There's an argument there for sure. I truly believe the iPhone 17 is the most complete base model iPhone we've ever seen. Even if you're on an older Pro phone, like even a 12 Pro or a 13 Pro, if you don't really need the third telephoto camera or some of those more pro advanced features, this could be the phone for you. And then we get to the brand new and first ever iPhone Air. Not iPhone 17 Air, just iPhone Air, which leads me to assume that it won't be updated every year. But this phone is still a question mark for me. I'm not fully sold. So because it's an Air device, it is both very thin at 5.6 millimeters and very light at 165 grams. The screen, though, is actually bigger than the iPhone 17. So the screen on the Air is 6.5 inches, which puts it right between the 6.3-inch screen of the iPhone 17 and the 6.9-inch screen of the iPhone 17 Pro Max. But really, the whole marketing of this phone is really just the thinness. Like, that is the main selling point, I guess. I don't know who asked for an incredibly thin phone, but we now have it. It does look pretty cool. Like, I'm sure the tech and what went into making it possible is awesome, but to get a phone to be that thin, you definitely have to make trade-offs. The first being, you can probably tell, is there's only one camera. It is a 48 megapixel camera, and it does have 2x optical zoom, but that's it. There's no ultra wide, there's no telephoto. It also does not have ProRes or macro photography or any spatial photos or videos. Like, it's just a pretty basic but quality main camera. And this new camera is part of what they are now calling the camera plateau. You would think another trade-off for having a phone this thin is the battery life, because there would just be no room for a big battery. But the reason the camera plateau is the shape and size it is because they've basically put the entire phone up in there. So the chip and the camera and basically everything except the battery is now in this camera plateau. And the chip, I will say, is the A19 Pro chip. So the same chip that is in the Pro phones. So the bottom thin part of the phone is pretty much all battery to try and give it as big of a battery as possible, and we'll just have to wait and see if it's big enough. Another concern I have with this phone is how hot it will be to hold. Because if you have any of the recent Pro models, 15 Pro or 16 Pro, you know those phones run more hot than in the past, let's say. And Apple has addressed those heat concerns in the new 17 Pros, which we'll talk about in a second. But this phone, the iPhone Air, you're basically holding the battery in your hand because it's so thin. And it's still a glass phone, and it's made out of titanium, which are two things Apple has changed in the new 17 Pros to help with heat dissipation. So although this phone looks great, it still has the cohesive glass back, and it's thin, it has the titanium rails. You have to assume that another trade-off is how hot this phone is going to run. But even if I give Apple the benefit of the doubt and assume they figured out the battery life and that the phone is not going to run hot, this phone is priced between the base iPhone and the Pro iPhones. So I'm not sure who this phone is for, because I'm not sure how many people at this price point would be willing to sacrifice cameras for a thin phone. We'll have to wait and see. But I have a feeling there's a longer game here. I think this is going to be one half of an eventual folding phone that Apple will release, and this iPhone Air might kind of be the guinea pig to see what the issues are, what might need to change before they put two together to make a folding phone. Is this a cool piece of tech to you? Are you excited about this? Or are you as confused as I am on some of these decisions? In terms of who should get this phone, or who I think Apple is targeting with the iPhone Air, some people just want the new different thing and the latest and greatest, and that's reason enough. And maybe those people don't take a lot of photos, who knows? Second is someone who just wants a mid-size screen, 6.5 inches. Maybe that's enough of a reason for someone. And three, it has a Pro chip. So it is a Pro phone in that sense. So someone who does want a very efficient and powerful phone, but maybe doesn't need all the bells and whistles, this could meet the mark for them. But seriously, just give it one more back camera and even I would consider buying it. If the iPhone Air can be considered more form over function, then I think the iPhone 17 Pro and Pro Max are more function over form. They have a completely redesigned new look, and personally, I'm not sure yet if I like it. I have to wait and see it in person. But they look more solid, more rugged even, kind of an industrial type vibe to them. And part of that is because they actually are a little thicker now than they used to be. But the body of the phone has switched from titanium to aluminum, including part of the back. So the backs of the phone used to be all glass, like we saw with the iPhone Air and the iPhone 17, but now this aluminum body kind of comes down into the back of the phone, and the main reason for that is to help with the heat dissipation that I mentioned earlier. Another thing they've done is they've actually added a vapor chamber to the Pro phones to help cool the phone off even more. And ideally and hopefully with the new aluminum body and this vapor chamber, there will be no more heating issues and the phone will actually perform better. You'll also notice it has a similar camera plateau to the iPhone Air, but much bigger because there are multiple cameras. And again, they have put a lot of the phone and the hardware up into this camera plateau so that the bottom of the phone can be mainly battery and the vapor chamber. But before we talk about the cameras, let's address the elephant in the room, the colors of the iPhone 17 Pros. There's 3 colors this year, and they're all not what Apple would normally do. First noticeable thing is there's no black iPhone 17 Pro or space gray, which is their most popular color in almost any product year after year. That's an interesting choice. There is instead a dark blue color, which I do think actually looks pretty sleek, but I'm not sure if that can replace a black phone. But the third option is this bright orange phone. So if you want everyone to know you have the latest iPhone, get the orange phone because it will turn heads, I am positive. I don't know. I personally, not a fan of the orange in general. I don't think there could have been any shade of orange phone that got me excited, but let me know what you think. What's your favorite Pro color? In terms of cameras, so the 17 Pros did of course get the new front selfie camera, which is great. On the back, all 3 cameras are now 48 megapixels. So the telephoto lens was the last one that has now been bumped up to 48 megapixels. And it also has a larger sensor, so the photos should be extra crispy. Something else I want to mention about this new telephoto lens, although it's 48 megapixels and has a bigger sensor now, it's 4x. And if you remember, the 16 Pros and even the 15 Pros had a 5x telephoto. And so at first it might seem like the new 17 Pros actually got a worse telephoto lens. However, the 15 Pros and 16 Pros had 5x, but only at 12 megapixels. Now we have the 17 Pros with 4x, but at 48 megapixels and a larger sensor. So the 4x quality is already going to be really great and way better. However, that means you can actually crop in more and your 8x zoom will now be 12 megapixels. So if you're looking at it that way, it's 5x zoom at 12 megapixels versus the new 8x zoom at 12 megapixels. There are also some new really pro video features like ProRes RAW, Apple Log 2, and Genlock. And for the really pro users, there's also a new 2 terabyte storage option on the 17 Pro Max only. If I look beyond the design, of the 17 Pros and the color options. I'm actually very happy with these updates. Everything going on the inside is awesome. I'm super excited for the new cameras, and the vapor chamber I think is going to make a great difference to performance and just overall heat of the 17 Pros. If you already do have a 16 Pro or a 16 Pro Max, the only reasons to upgrade are probably if you really need some of those new very pro video features, or if with your workflow you just were really lacking performance because of the heating issues. Other than that, you could probably wait another year. If you have a 15 Pro or Pro Max or earlier and you're a pro user, I definitely think it's worth upgrading this year. You're gonna get way better cameras. Basically, all the cameras are gonna be better this time around, including the front selfie camera, and even just battery life is gonna be noticeably different and better this year. So in that case, I do think it would be worth upgrading. Now, that being said though, all of the upgrade recommendations that I have made today, from the AirPods to watches and all the phones, is of course assuming that you are willing to spend the money to upgrade. But I'm recommending certain upgrades because I honestly and truly believe that there's enough change or enough updates that you are going to see the value and it will be worth it. So those are just my 2 cents, but of course you have to make the decision that is best for you. On the day you're watching this video, all of the new devices are already available for pre-order, but they will only be released on September 19th, Friday, September 19th. So make sure you're subscribed, because I will be unboxing some of the phones that I just absolutely have to see in person. So don't miss my reaction to that. See if my opinions have changed on anything. Also, a reminder that on Monday, September 15th, all of the new software will be released. So iOS 26, iPadOS 26, all of the new software will be released. Don't forget, they will have the new liquid glass design. So Apple really went bold on design this year, both in the software and the hardware. So definitely get subscribed, because I also have a lot of videos on the software coming out and all of the best new features that you need to know about. And if you're watching this video, you probably love Apple products as much as I do, and you probably already have a few Apple devices. So you should watch this video next for the best Apple ecosystem tips and tricks. So that's it. Have a great day. Bye.